everyone. It is about 9 years overdue, but I thought it was about time I told you all my home birth story. I have been meaning to do this honestly for 9 years. I don't know why I haven't sort of published this before. But a couple of people have been spurring me on and asked for positive home birth stories. So now that I am passionately supporting the positive birth movement and the Better Birth campaign and all these wonderful information portals for pregnant women, and this is the work that I've been doing for 10 years since I had my birth, it's about time I kind of spoke a bit more publicly about it. So my birth story, I'll try and keep this brief. I love sharing it with people, funnily enough, was a very wonderful positive home birth. It was my first child. He's my only child. He was born at home. He was born at 42 weeks, and what I loved most about it was just literally being able to be home. I am not a big fan of hospitals. A few years before that, my father had died in hospitals. I really don't like the smell of hospitals. I don't like the sometimes a powerless feeling. Well, that was when my dad was dying. There's not much I could do about his dying, so I associate them with a certain sense of powerlessness. Having said that, the home birth team at my local hospital were wonderful. I was with the UCLH hospital here in central London, so when it came to have my birth, as I said, it was 42 weeks, and it was a Saturday that he was born. And on the Friday morning, the midwife that had done most of the antenatal checkups with me and the home birth team, Yvonne, she was a lovely lady, she rang me up and she said, right, I'm on call tonight, all night. I finish at 8 a.m. I have my favourite supervisor on call with me, so it's coming tonight. We didn't know if it was a girl or a boy. She just said, it's coming tonight, I'll see you later. And so then, of course, my waters didn't break until 8:30 the following morning. So I knew that she'd just finished a 12-hour shift. And probably if I'd called her, I had the feeling she would have come anyway, but I just felt that was too unfair, and I'm not sure I wanted someone half asleep after a 12-hour shift during my birth, and I didn't know how long it would be. So I got the other home birth team, who I hadn't met any of them. So at a certain point I looked up and there were 3 midwives in the room, and I didn't know any of them. I'd never met them before, and I just shut my eyes and got on with it. So my waters broke at 8:30 in the morning. I sort of got up and they'd made a bit of a mess on the floor, so I managed to just about sort of clear that up, chucked a towel down, wiped it up, got myself in the shower, was cleaning myself up, and just feeling the water in the warm water in the shower was amazing and felt wonderful. But after a while that wasn't enough. You know, I'd sort of put the plug in to fill up the bath as well, but I just couldn't fit in the bath. It was so big and I couldn't sort of open my knees, and it was too narrow and it just wasn't big enough. So I well, first of all, the contractions, honestly, I'm being utterly honest here, were not at all painful. If anything, I couldn't feel them at all. My belly would go rigid, and I would feel some pressure on my cervix. I would feel some pressure pushing down, but there was absolutely no pain, no cramping, nothing at all, other than a slight discomfort, a bit of discomfort with this pressure pushing down. So to be honest, this was my first birth, and I wasn't entirely sure if I was in labour proper or if these were just Braxton Hicks, other than the fact that my waters had broken and I was 42 weeks. So I rang the hospital, I rang the midwives, and I was just talking to them completely normally as I am talking to you now and explaining this, and I was saying, I'm not sure if this is labour or not, you know, but I think I might be in labour. And because it was someone I didn't know on the phone. And so she said, oh, well, if you're not sure, then come on in to the hospital and we'll have a look. But just as she said that, another one of these waves of pressure, where my belly would go rigid and it was just pushing down, another wave came along, and I just said to her, I'm booked for a home birth. I'm not going anywhere. And as soon as she heard my voice change, she was just like, right then, we'll be right over. I'm sending someone right now. So I had my husband checking, keeping a note of how often those waves were coming. And I managed to wake him up from showering him from the bathroom, and he put up the birth pool, and he was chief birth pool attendant. It's quite a lot of work putting up a birth pool, and luckily we'd sort of done a dress rehearsal the week before. It was the summertime, it was July, and it was really lovely and warm, so we'd had fun just testing it out a few days or a week before. So we knew, we had all the equipment, we knew what he needed to do. He got it filled up. The tricky bit is getting the temperature right and then maintaining it at a nice temperature, and making sure the midnights didn't electrocute me with all their equipment that they wanted to stick in the water, or spilling the water out and mopping all of that up. So yeah, he had, and then putting it all away again. So yeah, that was quite a lot of work that he took charge of. So once the pool was up and I got in, it was just absolute heaven. Just the feeling of weightlessness that you have in water when you feel like a 10-ton hippo was wonderful. And being able to move without taking half an hour to sort of roll over is worth its weight in gold. And to me, that's just what birth pools are all about, and that's the whole point in birth pools. So my birth pool was just big enough for me to sit in with my legs stretched out, and it sort of came up to my armpits, and so it was like this sort of oval, my own womb within my room at home, and it kind of kept everyone else at arm's length to me, which is exactly what I wanted, so I could just be in there and breathe. I hadn't done hypnobirthing, but I had done quite a lot of yoga, and I knew about Ujjayi breathing, which is a sort of back of your throat deep breathing to help with relaxation, meditation. So I was just in my pool doing Ujjayi breathing, and so the waters broke up at 8:30, and he came out at 1:30 at lunchtime. And honestly, I was not in pain. The only part that was painful was when he was actually coming out, when at the second stage, when he was literally being born. And the midwife actually said to me, don't push, because she could see I was stretching, and he was a 4.5 kilogram baby. He was big. And she wanted me to give my skin more time to stretch. She could see that I might be tearing, and I could feel that I was probably about to tear. But honestly, by that point, I really didn't care. The urge to push was just so overwhelming. I was just like, I don't care. I just pushed him out, ripped, and you know, it was fine. They stitch you up. It stings for a couple of weeks when you wee, but you know, it heals. And I really didn't care that I tore, and I knew I was going to care, and I went ahead and pushed anyway. So, and then what happened, he came out, and he just, I didn't even realise he was out yet. So the midwife, I was on all fours, kind of leaning on the side of the pool, and at some point the midwife said to me, you've got to catch your baby now. And I was like, what do you mean I've got to? That's what you're here for. That's your job. And she's like, just reach down and you'll catch him. And I sort of reached down, I was like this big jelly blob in the water, and I didn't even realise that he was out. So I just pulled him up, and he just looked at me like, what was that all about? And there he was. So yeah, I remember that very clearly. So yeah, so you know, by then the pool was a bit of a mess, let's be honest. There's a lot of mucky stuff, all kinds of bodily fluids that come out into the water. And so we did come out of the water for both of us to get cleaned up. And then it was just skin to skin in the bed, lots of breastfeeding, snuggling up, just, you know, loving the moment and relief and all of that lovely stuff. And so then after that, what happened was it took longer, or it felt like it took longer to get the placenta out than it took to get my son out. And the midwives were really wonderful and patient and let me try everything that I could think of as a homeopath, and, you know, going to the loo, and I was catheterized and all sorts of stuff to empty my bladder, which had just kind of gone numb. I didn't even realize that I had a full bladder. So we did all that, and still it wasn't coming out. So basically my cervix had just kind of clamped shut after the birth, and even though my placenta had come loose and had done its job and had stopped pulsating and the cord was white and we'd cut the cord, and it just wasn't opening up anymore to come out. So so then I ended up having to go, after my wonderful home birth, which is what I wanted and I was so pleased with and relaxed with, I ended up having to go into hospital, which was only 5 minutes away, to have the placenta removed manually. So all they did was just reached in and pulled it out. And frankly, after giving birth to this 4.5 kilogram baby, having a hand reach in and pull out a placenta was not such a big deal. And so then they were able to stitch me up and send me home. So I was back home again the same day. So I was very grateful to have my home birth. I was very grateful for the hospital assistance. What they don't always tell you when you have a home birth is I think it's a standard procedure to have an ambulance on standby. So it was an ambulance transfer for myself, and my baby was carried by one of the midwives in the ambulance to the hospital just to get the placenta removed. So that was fairly straightforward, and they were just there the instant they rang for them, basically. And I was just very pleased, and my son pretty much slept through all of that going into the hospital, because he'd already fed, we'd already had skin to skin, he fed some more and had more skin to skin in hospital. He was always with me. And some of my family came with me. I had a friend acting as a doula, and my husband came with me, and it was, my mum was there. And so we just carried on the little celebratory party in the hospital while they got the placenta out. And then we came home, same night. So, yeah, it was a wonderful home birth, and I'm very, very grateful to the UCLH midwives home birth team. They supported me all the way, and I would recommend it to anyone. But of course, you know, positive birth is all about by any means necessary and by any choice necessary. It's your choice. If you don't know what your options are, then you're kind of going to have very limited choices. But I would like to also credit Ina May Gaskin. In my opinion, every single woman should be made to read this at least twice during her pregnancy before she makes any choices. It's an amazing, amazing, wonderful book. I also love her earlier book. If you're into the sort of hippy-dippy, trippy language that they used in the 70s, but this one is much more up-to-date in its language. Not that the mechanics of birth have changed much in thousands of years, but the language you use to talk about it kind of has, so at least since the 70s. So absolutely, please read this book if you are pregnant. This is the manual, the only manual you'll ever need on how to get babies out of your belly and have a positive birth experience. The only thing missing from this book is she doesn't talk about water births, but there's lots of other information about that. But regardless, I would still consider this the absolute best book on planet Earth to, and I'm sure it's available in lots of languages.